In Sons of Darkness, I was trying to be GRRM, an Indian GRRM, but in Dance of Shadows, I'm more GM, which is Gourav Mohanty, than GRRM. But that being said, I think we dive a lot deeper into ancient Indian uh, USPs when it comes to the fantasy genre. Let me put it another way. If you speak about witches, let's say I'm talking about witches, right? The general understanding of that is they are plant lovers who love animals and who have a very hippie lifestyle, if I might call it that way, right? And very nice and peace, and they live in harmony with everybody. But Indian witches, ancient Indian witches rather, where eating, they involve themselves in concepts of tantra. They used sex to elevate themselves to a higher consciousness. It was everything about chaos energy, and that is something which is so attractive and not spoken enough about. Um, and in fact, there was like concepts of cannibalism as well involved in that. So I really wanted to get into this aspect and bring it out to the world in a tablet of this fantasy tale which I had. Similarly, you have Indian classical dances which have so much science into it, and that has not been replicated elsewhere. So that is something which I've again brought into this book. I think there's just a lot more humor, the political stakes are dialed up to 100, and if you enjoy stories where there's a librarian, there's an assassin, there's an archaeologist. If you enjoy these professions, I think you'll enjoy Dance of Shadows. As I spoke about, that Dance of Shadows has three main characters whose journey we follow. One is the pirate princess who has now become a pirate queen, but then now she realizes that she's trapped in a marriage because the higher you ascend, you realize your hands are more shackled. Then you have the librarian princess who is an introvert, like a perfect Pinterest book moth, if you may call it that. But she needs to learn how to steal from these witches I spoke about and a guild of thieves to stop the world from falling to an ancient plague. I don't know, maybe that was inspired from the COVID pandemic. And then you have this dancer, this classical Indian dancer, which is called a Devdasi. In fact, Devdasis are a counterpart to the Japanese geisha system. That's the best reference I could use. This Devdasi is tasked to spy on this archer who's been continuing from book one. His name is Karna. But then she ends up falling in love with him. And how does that evolve? So these are the main tropes, but there's a big conclave that's happening. It's like a UN meeting of some sorts, but this United Nations meeting goes completely haywire because of the situations that unfold in this book. So this is the basic plot of Dance of Shadows. I plant the milestone markers, the story is basically charted out in my mind, but just in terms of like a 1,000-kilometer range. The road which we are going to take is something which I discover as I'm writing, but the milestones are all marked. So when it came to the second book, I knew that I wanted to write about things which I love to read. So in book two, you have a heist. You have an archaeological expedition, 20,000 leagues under the sea. So these are aspects which I really wanted to cover. There's a gladiator match. So all of these three concepts was something which I really wanted to explore, and it was so difficult to write at the beginning. Like any other project which you start, it becomes very difficult. But once you're reaching the end, you realize, wow, this was a brilliant, very sweet, nice piece of cake. But I don't know why was I so worried about. So when I marked these plot ideas which I had, which I knew that this is how the story is going to progress. And then I had scene ideas, like a gladiator scene, a heist scene, a journey to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So I combined these aspects and then the story started forming around it.
The heist. Tell us about the heist. That must be cool to plot.
Definitely. The heist is something which I really enjoy. I'm a big Ocean's 11 fan, and I think George Clooney and Brad Pitt do such an amazing job in that movie. And I was watching it again, and I wish I could see this in an Indian setting, because till date I have not read of a great heist. Maybe I'm not that well read, but I think I've read a lot of literature, but in an Indian setting, not so much. So I wanted to bring a heist dealing with Earth ships where they're trying to steal from ships that go over land. And this is also something which has been inspired from history, actually, because apparently across the Red Sea, there is this isthmus over which the ships used to be rolled on wood, like on wooden logs, so that it didn't have to go a long way across Black Sea and reach on the other side of Arabia. So this was some sort of a thing which was done. I thought, okay, why not turn this into a fantasy concept? Because Northeast India is full of bogs and swamps and marshes. That is the actual geography of that land. And I thought maybe create this fantastical rail system on which ships go, and ships which are fused to each other. So these are called Earth ships in my book, and the heist somewhat takes place around that. So this was something which I really enjoyed. So you have multiple characters with their different personalities, and I really enjoyed writing. The third book is there, but it will take a while to write that. I promise I'll be faster than George R. R. Martin, but it will take a while because there are so many characters, so many plot points. Dance of Shadows technically takes place parallel to the events which are taking place in Sons of Darkness. Like they both go together. So it's an expansive world that way, which will converge in the third book. So there were a lot of plot ideas in book three which connect with whatever I've written so far. The ending was always sorted in my head, and the beginning and the middle. These 3 points are very important for me when I'm writing the book. Of course, they change and they amend and they mold and they metamorphose as I write, but the basic plot remains the same because they're connected to the overall plot in general. So yeah, these were all planned out, but reaching them was a tough part.